Okay. In this video, we're going to talk. I put this mic down, not my headphone. And we are going to continue with this video. In this video, we're going to talk about what is an API, application programming interface, through an AWS website. Okay. Through an AWS website, we got to know what is an API. What is an API? API is a mechanism that enables two software component to communicate with each other. API is mechanism enable to software component to communicate with each other using a set of definition and protocol. For example, the weather Euro software system contain daily weather data. The weather app on your phone talk to system API and show your daily weather update on your phone. What does an API stand for? API stand for API, application programming interface. In context of API, the word application refer to the any software way of a distinguishing function. Interface can be thought or contract of service between two application. The contract define how to communicate with each other using request and reference. The API documentation contain information how developer structure those requests and response. Do you get it? What I want to say? How do API work? Application architecture are usually explained in terms of client and server. The application sending request is called client, and the application sending response is called server. So the weather example, the Bureau weather database is the server, and the mobile app is the client. There are four ways the API can work on depending on the work and created. Shopee. The API use simple object access protocols, client and server exchange messages using XML. This is less flexible API that has more popular in the past. Yes, today onward the JSON format is used more, not an XML. RPC API. The API are called remote procedure call. The client complete a function or procedure on the server. The server send the outwork to the client. WebSocket API. WebSocket is another modern web API development that JSON object facet. A WebSocket API to support two-way to communicate between client apps and server. The server can send callback message to connect client, making it more efficient than REST API. REST API. They are more popular and flexible found on the web today. The client send request to server as data. The server uses client input to start internal function and return output data vector today. Let's look at the REST API in more detail below. What is REST API? REST API is representational state stands for REST defined a set of function like get, put, delete, etc. that client can use to access server data. Client and server exchange data is using HTTP. The main feature of REST API is statelessness. Statelessness means that server does not save client between data between requests. Client request to server as a similar to URL and type of a browser to visit website. The response from the server is plain data without the typical graphical rendering of the web page. What is web API? Now we got to know what is web API. Web API is a web service or application processing interface between a web server and web browser. All the web browser are using API, but not all APIs are web services. REST API is special type of web API that uses standard architecture I explained above. The different term around APIs like Java API, Service API exist. Historical API were created before the World Wide Web. Modern Web API or REST API in term called be interchangeably. What is API integration? API integration are software component that automatically update data between client and server. Some example of API integration are when automatic data sync to cloud from phone, image gallery or time, and data automatically sync in your laptop when you travel to another time zone. Enterprises can also use them to efficiency automate many system function. What are the benefit of REST API? Integration. API are used to integrate new application with existing software system. The increased development speed because functionality have to be written from scratch. You can API to bridge existing code. Innovation. Entire industry can change the arrival of a new app. Business need to respond quickly and support rapid development innovation service. This can be making changes in API development without having to rewrite the whole code. expansion. API present a unique opportunity for business to meet their client need across the different platforms. For example, Map API allow map information integration via website, Android, iOS. Any business can similar access to their internal database by using free and paid APIs. Ease of maintenance. The API act as a gateway between two systems. Each system is obligated to make internal change so that the API is not impacted the way any future code change by any one party do not impact the party. What are different type of APIs? API classified both according to the architecture and scope of use. We have already explored the main type of architecture. Let's take a look of the scope of use. Private API, these are internal to an enterprise and only by connecting system and data within business. Public API, these are open to the public and may be used by anyone. There may be or may not be authorization cost associated with these type of API. Partner API, the only accessible authorized external developer to aid business to business partnership. Composite API, these combine two or more different API or address complex system requirement or behavior. What is an API endpoint and why it is important? API endpoint is a final touch point in an API communication system. This includes server URLs, services, and other specific digital location where the information is sent and received between the system. API endpoint is critical to enterprises of two main reasons. Security. API endpoint make the system vulnerable to attack. API monitoring is crucial for preventing misuse. Performance. API endpoint enable high traffic ones and can cause bottleneck and after affect system performance. How to secure REST API? All API must secure through proper authentication and monitoring. Two main ways to secure REST API include authorization token. These are the used to authorize user to make their API call. Authentication check that the user are who they claim to be and that they have access right to particular API call. For example, when you log in your email address, your email client uses authentication tokens for secure access. API keys verify the program or application the API call. The identity, the application that ensure the right access, the right access, the right required to particular API call. API keys are not secure as a token, but they allow API monitoring in order to gather data on usage. You may have noticed a long string of character and number in your browser URL when you visit different website. The string is an API and website uses to make internal API call. How to create an API? Due diligence and effort are required to build an API that are developer who will want to work with trust. There are 5 steps required to plan the API. This way, API specification like OpenAI provide blueprint for your API design. It is better to think about different use cases in advance and ensure the API adhere to current API development session. Build the API designer prototype API using boilerplate code. Once the prototype is ready, developer can customize it in internal specification. Test the API. API testing is the same as the software testing, must be done to prevent bugs and defect. API testing tools can be used to strength test the API against the cyber attacks. Document the API. While API is self-explanatory, API documentation act like a way to improve usability. Well-documented API that offer a range of function and use cases tend more popular service-oriented architecture. Market the API. Just an Amazon is an online marketplace for retail. API marketplace exists for developer to buy and sell their API. Listing your API can allow you to monetize. What is API testing? API testing strategies. Testing strategies are similar to the software testing methodologies. The main focus of the validating server's responses. API testing include making multiple requests to API endpoint for performance testing, writing unit testing for checking business logic and functional correctness, security testing for simulating system attacks. How to write API documentation? Writing comprehensive API documentation is part of API management process. API documentation can be auto-generated using tools or written manually. Some best practices include writing explanation in sample, easy to read English documents generated by tools can become worthy and require editing. Using codes sample to explain functionality, maintaining the documentation so that it is accurate, up to date. Aiming the writing style of a beginner, covering all problem the API can solve a user. What what are the use, what to use, how to use, or no, what to use. How to use an API. This is a step to implement a new API architecture. Include obtaining an API. This is done by creating a verified account with the API provider. Set up an HTTP API client. The tool allows to structure API request easily using the API key conversation. If you don't have an API client, you can try to structure the request yourself in a browser by referring to the API documentation. When you're comfortable with new API syntax, you can start doing it in your code. Where can I find new APIs? Where I can find new APIs can be found in API marketplace, API direction, API marketplace, and open platform where you can list an API for sale. API direction or control repositories, regulator, or where directory owner. Expert API designer may assist or test a new API before editing. Some popular API websites include Rapid API, the largest global API market for 10,000 plus public and 1 million active developer. Rapid API will allow user to test API directly on their platform before committing to purchase. Public API for that. What is API gateway? What do you mean by the API gateway? API gateway is an API implement management tool for enterprise. How many minutes has been completed? Around 11 minutes has been completed this video. I've just read out this article. There's a code of conduct. There's a against the rule that we have decided on earlier. We are going to create a video only with job slides, not through an article. But I haven't played this in a random video, so I have not created slides for that. That's why I'm creating this video for using an article itself, not through an slides. So what's so? API gateway is an API management tool for enterprise client that has a broad range of backend services. API gateway typically handle common tasks like authentication, statistic, and rate management that they are applicable across all API calls. API gateway is a fully managed service that makes it easy for developer to create, publish, maintain, monitor, secure API at any scale. It handles all the tasks involved in accepting and processing thousands of concurrent API call, including traffic management, core support, authorization, and access control, throttling monitoring, and API version management. What is GraphQL? GraphQL is query language that described developed specifically for API to prioritize, giving client exactly that they request, no more. It is designed to make API fast, flexible, and developer friendly. As an alternative of REST, GraphQL gives front-end developer the ability to query multiple database, microservice, and API with a single GraphQL endpoint. Organizations choose to build APIs with GraphQL because it helps the developer faster. AWS Sync is a full managed services that make easy to develop GraphQL APIs by handling the heavy lifting and securely connecting data sources like AWS Dynamo, AWS Lambda, and more. AWS AP Sync can push real-time data update over the WebSocket to million of the client for mobile and web application. AppSync also provide local data. How to get Amazon API service? That's all. I think 15 minutes has 13.30 seconds has completed in this video. So what to get to know about? In conclusion, with the API is a protocol that connects server to the front-end application through this protocol, like in a cable. If you want water from a well, then you require to pull out the water through that rope, we can say. It's like that in itself. It's a network or protocol that used to extract data from a database for front-end application to get all this operation can be done through the API endpoint or API call. Various limit has been decided by different country vary on the basis of it's particularly depend on them. It's not like that user can define that, but yeah, it depends on the company that providing API services for their client. Various limit, some provide free trial or 30 or 40 days for their services, or some provide like to up to this limit you are available. Up to this limit you can request. After that you have to pay amount for the API calls. So I already have, I think 15 minutes has to be completed in this video. We'll see you next time. Till then, take care.